Welcome back to Highest You, where leadership meets soul. This is the podcast for leaders interested in making a human upgrade to lead from a deeper, wiser, and more purposeful place. Every episode, we explore the inner world of leadership to unpack what it takes to lead with presence, courage, and resilience, what I call human sustainability. In this episode of Highest You, I'm delighted to be in conversation with Sabahatt Habib, the Chief People Officer at the Giving Movement. In a corporate landscape that often prioritizes metrics over morale, Sabahatt stands out as a fierce advocate for humanity. Born and raised in Kenya as a third-generation Indian, she arrived in Dubai 18 years ago, armed with resilience and a drive to make her mark. A journey that's taken her from building HR departments from the ground up at pioneering startups like Mum's World to leading the people function at one of the region's most dynamic, high-growth brands. Sabahatt, who's a leader who isn't afraid to admit that championing the human spirit in business is often a battle, but one that's absolutely worth fighting. She believes that high performance and deep humanity are not mutually exclusive. In fact, one can't exist sustainably without the other. In this conversation, we explore her mission to leave the workplace better than she found it, and the courage it takes to implement truly people-centric policies, and how she navigates the complexities of significant leadership transitions. We discuss what it really means to lead with soul when the pressure's on, and why being a good leader simply starts with being a good human. Welcome, Sabahatt.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
It is my pleasure. So I'm going to open the conversation by talking about you.
Yay.
So tell us, beyond the job title and the company, tell us about who you are, your highest you. How does that show up?
Well, I'm a human being, and as all human beings, our highest us versions are our best versions. So in my highest me, I journal, I exercise, I'm peaceful, I'm calm, I'm a better daughter, I'm a better wife, I'm a better leader, I think better, I'm more clear on life, and I'm less reactive, less irritated, just more calm. And that's my highest version of myself.
Sounds amazing. Especially the journaling.
Oh, I try to journal as much as I can. Like I try at least 6 times a week.
Well done. Amazing. Yeah. Note to self. So Sabahatt, you have an incredibly rich heritage. You were born and grew up in Kenya, and you moved to Dubai 18 years ago. And you've said that your mission is to leave the workplace better than you found it, which I love as a mission. So can you tell us about how your background and coming to Dubai, navigating that kind of change, how that's shaped you as a human and shaped your mission?
So coming from Kenya to Dubai, I mean, I was fresh off the boat. I was very young. I entered the workforce really young, and at that time, I had a few instances that really helped me change my perspective of what I want to be and what I want to do in life. So just to, give some more examples. In my first job, there was a senior member who yelled, shouted. I mean, I made a small mistake. It was just an administrative mistake, but it literally was blown out of proportion completely. And I was not yelled at, but I was yelled about, if that makes sense. And I could still hear it through the closed doors. And I was so young. So I remember it like it was yesterday. I literally ran to the bathroom and I cried my eyes out. And I thought, I'm going to be such a failure. I'm never going to be able to do any kind of job. And my heart was broken. I wanted to resign, but I was like, I can't do that because I need the job. And there was this like flood of emotions, and my confidence was broken just by a small administrative mistake that literally had zero impact. Like it did not harm anyone. So it made me realize that the way we react or the way we deal with someone at a workplace, we can either build them, we can amplify them, we can grow them, or we can really break them and negatively impact their entire life. And the other thing that I faced coming from Kenya to Dubai 18 years ago is that at that time, There was like huge pay disparity because of me being from an ethnic minority and Kenyan, etc. So there were all these things that were really unfair in the workplace. And all of that, as I grew up and became more mature and, dealt with more people and culture issues, it just made me realize like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to make sure that any workplace I enter, I leave it better than I found it. And even just the world at large, like I want to spread the message. I want to talk. I want to speak. I want to have these conversations, because even if one person takes something good out of it, I've done something great in my life.
I love it. And we share a mission, actually. Making working life better is definitely my mission too. And I think organizations sometimes can be very harsh, inhospitable places for humans, for human souls. And,
unnecessarily.
Yeah. And I'm sorry that you experienced that, but obviously very formative for you. And certainly in terms of the power of leadership and good leadership in building people. I hope it was character forming, at least.
Oh, for sure. I learned a lot. I mean, that's why I'm here today. If I would have let it crush me, I would have never been who I am. So I definitely learned a lot, honestly.
So you've been very transparent about the fact that keeping humanity at the center of a business is often a battle against numbers.
Yes.
And what keeps you energized when you're constantly having to fight for the human element in a very high pressure environment?
So I am a human being. It is exhausting. There are so many times when I myself want to give up, and I'm like, okay, it's better just to ride with the tide than to actually go against it. But nothing worthwhile in life comes easy. And my mom has always told me, as recently as just this week, like she keeps telling me the same thing. And she always says that, Sabahatt, if you see something wrong in life, even if it is not happening directly towards you, by you seeing it and keeping quiet and not doing anything, it is in itself wrongdoing as well. And I think also being in the people and culture team, seeing all the stories because of my role, I mean, I get to know all the troubles of, everything that comes across my plate. And that it constantly reminds me that this person is someone's mom, this person is someone's dad, this person is someone's whole world. So treat them with humanity and dignity. Why yell at them? Why treat them with so much, why treat someone badly when they are a human being just like yourself? And this constant reminder always makes me feel like, okay, this is worth it. It's worth it to go against the tide. It's worth it to have all that kind of stress because I'm doing something worthwhile. I'm making a change and I'm having a positive impact on a human life.
I love that. And that often we just see people in sort of two dimensions, don't we? We kind of see them at work and, and that's the impression that you have. But I love this idea of kind of seeing them in the wider context of their world and imagining that at the end of the day, they go home and tell their partner or their kids or their parents about the experience that they've had in that organization.
That's true.
And, I think bearing that in mind is a beautiful way of bringing people's humanity into it, because we also know that everybody's struggling with things,
Of course.
Behind the scenes. There's all sorts of stuff going on in people's life that you have really often no idea about. And once you've been through a few of those things yourself, I think it really helps bring that humanity to the fore.
Very true.
Yeah.
Each person is fighting the battle just like us. We're not the only ones in the world having our own problems. Everyone does, as you said.
Yeah. So you said something in our pre-conversation which really struck me. During your time at Mum's World, you built an HR department from scratch. So congratulations from that. An amazing thing to do. But often you said you were often feeling terrified in the process. So I guess I'm really interested. What did that experience teach you about the relationship between fear and growth? And how does that inform the leader that you are today?
So when I joined Mum's World, I was so afraid, so scared. I even told my boss that, and that was Mona Ataya. She's the founder of Mum's World. And I just told her, I am so scared because I was given a managerial role with, very few number of years of experience. And obviously she saw something in me. And she gave me these words of wisdom that has stayed with me forever. And I actually see the reality of it. And she told me that whenever you're afraid of something, whenever you're fearful of something, you must learn. Surround yourself with knowledgeable people, surround yourself with experts in that field and learn, because there is nothing in this life that you cannot learn. Everything can be learned. You can teach yourself everything because fear is always of the unknown. I was afraid because I had never done it. But if I surround myself with knowledge and learn how to do it, then I will no longer be afraid. In fact, that was my growth because then once I was successful in doing that, I joined other startups and I was able to do it in much better. So wherever there's fear, there is growth. And then once you accomplish or conquer your fear, that becomes your comfort zone. Now it's easy until you move on to your next challenge.
And you move on to your next, and it keeps, your comfort zone keeps expanding.
Exactly.
So I love fear as a guide to what needs to be learned. You know, when you start feeling fearful, it kind of signals there's something here that I need to learn.
Yeah.
Some way in which I need to grow. It's great. And I have a personal belief that life is the curriculum for expanding oneself and one's soul, actually, and everything that happens in life is an opportunity to grow.
So true.
So, you know, I think if we look at it that way, we end up welcoming experiences, even when they're quite tough, because they give us a chance to test ourselves, to stretch ourselves, you know.
Exactly.
And some of us actually go out of our way to seek things that that put us into that fear zone. I don't know if that's you, but you know, I know that I often take on things that I haven't done before quite deliberately.
Yeah, me too. I do that all the time because I want to grow. I mean, if you're ambitious and you want to be someone and do something in life, then you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone all the time. So I'm constantly doing things that I'm scared of and that fear me. But I know that's the only way I'm going to grow. Otherwise, I would never be here. I would never be who I am today if I would have just stayed in my little comfort zone.
Like saying yes to coming on podcasts,
Exactly.
or, you know, my latest is saying yes to keynote speeches is the thing that I'm saying yes to. Any keynote speech, yes.
Wow, it's really cool.
That's my stretch zone right now. So we're going to talk about change and organizational culture. And I think, you know, rapid change can test even the strongest cultures. And we're moving into a period where change is accelerating, particularly driven by AI and those sorts of things. You know, the organizations have never had to adapt faster, I think, than they do now. So as a people leader, how do you help teams stay grounded and secure even when an organization is changing at pace?
See, change is going to happen. It's completely inevitable, as you said. It is happening at the speed of lightning.
Yeah.
And I think we need to see, okay, what does a person need in order for them to go through change? They need clarity, they need communication, they need transparency, and they need trust as well. Trust that whatever the change is that we're going through, we will get through it together. And there is going to be open communication. There is going to be no surprises. You know, we can't, especially with AI, as you mentioned, everyone is so scared, oh my God, AI is going to replace us. But if you have open communication and transparency, and you say, no, AI is not going to replace you, but it is going to replace the people that don't use AI, because AI can actually make you more efficient. So it's just about clear communication, transparency. That's all that people want. They just want to know what's coming, as much as, you know, you can give them that.
Yeah, I agree with that. As much as you can give them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Of course, that's the key word.
Sometimes we don't know, do we?
Yeah.
You know, and actually, I think it's uncertainty really that's the challenge at the moment. Is like nobody really knows, you know. And if they say they know, they're not telling the truth, because nobody knows what the future is going to bring. And so there's a degree of getting comfortable with uncertainty that I think is really helpful for people. And I think particularly for HR leaders to be able to help their organizations to deal with uncertainty, to be adaptive.
And also just to say it, you know, like just to say, we don't know. I don't know what's going to happen next week or next month, but whatever it is, we will get through it together. You know, sometimes as leaders, we put all of this pressure on ourselves that we have to have all the answers. We cannot show to, you know, our people or our colleagues that we don't have the answer. No, because we are the leaders. So we need to know 100%, you know, what is the next step, but we don't. We're human beings as well. And it's okay to say that rather than, you know, how would I say, it's saying things that are completely untrue or false and people seeing right through it and then breaking trust.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I agree with you. Do you see much of that in your business? I do come across leaders who still aren't prepared to be vulnerable and say they don't know. And they say things like, well, you know, the reason I'm a leader is because I'm supposed to know all the answers. And And I really like what Satya Nadella's done at Microsoft, which is changed his culture from a know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all culture.
Exactly.
And he's made it okay for people to say, I don't know. In fact, they get rewarded for saying, I don't know. Let's explore this together, which I think is the empowering way of saying I don't know, right? It's not I don't know, boo.
Oh, no, definitely. Of course.
It's,
I mean,
it's I don't know.
but
Let's
learn.
look at this
Yes.
together and see what might be possible.
I agree. And I've seen so many leaders that don't say that just because. I mean, I've seen people who actually push their own opinion, even though they know it's not true, just because they don't want to look like they don't know. But this is all the traditional olden days kind of thinking. I mean, we're in the 21st century. We cannot behave this way. You know, I even find it surprising when I see such leaders existing in this time and day. And I'm like, really? Really? Are you actually trying to do this right now? But it's okay. We live and we learn.
She says, taking a deep breath.
It's okay.
There's no authenticity in that. So how do you as an HR leader support your leaders to be able to show up authentically, to say, I don't have the answer to that. How do you make that okay in a culture?
I think it's by leading by example, right? I mean, people do what they see. So if you as a leader and your C-suite team behave in a certain way and show that they don't know all the answers, and hence let's have a workshop or let's work on it together, or accept when we thought we knew the answer, but the answer was incorrect and there's actually a better way of doing it. Owning up to that and having that open communication and transparency, and then you will have other people doing the same. People act like they're leaders. Our unconscious and conscious behaviors, everything.
Model it. Role model it.
Exactly. It's true.
Yeah. So whilst we're on the topic of showing up and being okay with showing weakness, I want to bring in the topic of kindness, because it's something that you talk about quite a lot in business, and you have a belief that it's easy to be a good leader. You just need to be a good human.
Yes.
But I think some people sometimes equate kindness in business with being weak. Like, people will take advantage of me if I'm too nice to them, if I'm kind to them. So how do you prove to skeptics that you can demand high efficiency and performance while still leading with really profound kindness?
Because first of all, kindness is not weakness. It's actually quite demanding to be kind. It's quite difficult as well. And I have the conversations with a lot of leaders, C-suite members, line managers, etc. Giving feedback is kindness, but it is difficult. Having those difficult conversations with your colleagues, telling them the areas that they need to improve, giving them feedback immediately and not waiting for them, for their performance review 6 months down the line or annually, and then tell them, hey, actually, Sabahatt, you could have done X, Y, Z. And then they're upset and depressed and then they go home, etc. The kind thing to do, the right thing to do, the human thing to do was to tell them then and there, you should have improved on X, Y, Z. You need to work on this. So being kind is demanding. People who think kindness is weakness, I don't know what definition of kindness they're thinking. I think it's just, they're not, I don't know what definition that they're looking at, but being kind is being human, doing the right thing, making those difficult calls, making those difficult decisions, taking the extra time to give, an employee bad news, but taking the time to do it in the right manner. You see what I mean? Having conversations, taking time to have a proper one-on-one, taking time to understand what's going on in an employee's life. That's kindness, but it takes effort. It takes time. So kindness is not a weakness.
No. And as you say, not super easy. It's often the route that people shy away from.
Yes.
And I really like the work of Kim Scott. Have you come across Radical Candor?
Yes.
And her definition, I think, is kind of akin to your definition of kindness, where she says to be clear is to be kind.
Exactly.
And to be unclear is unkind. And so we think we're being nice to people by kind of fudging and hedging, and actually be much kinder, just to be kind of more direct, so people know where they stand.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed 1,000,000%. Yeah.
So we've talked about the need for spiritual intelligence. It's something that I bang on about all the time right now, because I think it's the next thing that leaders really need to pay attention to. IQ has been important for a very long time. EQ has always been important for leadership, being able to relate with people, but SQ is spiritual intelligence, which is about being able to make values-based decisions, wise, grounded, ethical decisions, about looking into the future and doing what's right. So I think it's really super important. And also emotional literacy, and you and I have talked about Brené Brown in this domain, and I think we both have a great respect for the work of Brené Brown, who has helped leaders, I think, to define an emotional language. And lots of people grow up without an emotional language. We didn't do emotions in my house. It was not something that was expressed, and if we had them, they certainly weren't named. It's like I remember going to university and having a conversation with a friend, and I said, well, I don't think I have emotions. And she laughed at me, and that was the beginning of quite a long journey for me. I wasn't born a coach, right? I mean, it took me years to actually learn an emotional language. So, but I think, why do I talk about this? Because I think, you work in a very fast-paced retail environment, and, I think it's really critical for leaders to be able to expand their emotional vocabulary, to be able to lead in a way that encompasses their own emotions and other people's emotions, and actually brings that in a productive way. So tell us about what leading with the humanity looks like to you.
First of all, I must say it's so common, including myself, to not know what the emotions are that you're feeling. A lot of us mislabel emotions thinking that we're feeling something, but in reality, it's actually something completely different. And I learned how to name emotions through Brené Brown's work, Atlas of the Heart, it's incredible. That book really taught me a lot. And being in a workplace that's so fast moving, of course, we're stressed out all the time, and people loosely use words like, oh my God, I'm so stressed, I'm so overwhelmed. But that's two very different definitions. Being stressed means I know exactly what I need to do, but I have a lot of things that I need to do. So your manager needs to help you in terms of prioritization. Being overwhelmed means I don't know what to do now. I'm so overwhelmed with work, I don't even know where to begin. And then your line manager needs to come in and actually coach you and guide you and help you through it. Being sad means that you've been, it's sorrow, it's grief that you've lost something. So you need empathy. Being burnt out and being exhausted has a completely different meaning. Being exhausted means that, okay, I just need some time off, maybe a weekend off, and then I'm going to come back on Monday and everything's going to be great. I'm just tired. That's it. Being burnt out is more long term. It means that there's something wrong with the culture. There's something that we need to really double click on. So leaders really do need to work on the definitions, because they hear this on an ongoing basis with their people as well. And as I said, even as people, we label things incorrectly. I have used the word burnt out several times before I learned the actual definition. And in reality, I was just exhausted. I wasn't really burnt out. But you see, but all of us, we loosely use these terms. But as leaders, if we know the definition, we can actually investigate, what are you really feeling? Are you angry, or are you having resentment? Are you disappointed? Just the definitions are so important, because then as leaders, we know what to do next to help.
I love that. There's a precision in the language, that because what we're talking about here is people's inner landscape, isn't it? And the only way to elicit that is through this kind of more precise use of language, and helping people to spot and identify what they're actually feeling. And why is it important, do you think, for leaders to help others to be able to express their emotions effectively at work?
Because if you're able to use the right word to describe what you're feeling, or if you're able to help the other person put the right word as to what they're feeling, then as a leader, you will be able to know how to help them next. So if your person is sad, you know that you need to show them empathy. As I said, if a person is feeling overwhelmed, you need to coach them, guide them, look at their workload. If a person is stressed, then, maybe you need to help them in terms of prioritization, because they know what they need to do, but they just are feeling a bit what do I prioritize? So by learning these definitions and by teaching these definitions, you'll be able to hit the nail on the head, so to say.
I love that. Thank you for elaborating it so beautifully. And I often have clients who struggle with empathy.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, is relates to this because, it's an inability really to understand others' emotions and to be able to spot them and label them. And I think, that starts with having the language for your own emotions. And so, I really think that everybody should read Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart. I have a copy. I'm willing to loan it out to any leader who would like to take a flick through it. It was an eye opener to me, actually, and I think after all these years, 30 years in this field, I have some affinity with people's emotional resonance. But I read it and I was just like, wow, this book is amazing. The depth of texture that you can really get in terms of emotional language, beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. I want to talk about you actually and your inner landscape and your kind of, your sort of what's formed you, and particularly a turning point. It's my belief that people tend to have a kind of turning point in life, some moment that really shifted something deep inside them. And I'm wondering what yours might have been.
So it's very true. Everyone has a turning point in their lives. It's sad that was my turning point, but my turning point was when my dad passed away. And I think before that, I don't even know how I was living life, like more like with my blinders on or something. But after going through that loss, I hit rock bottom, as some of us, we need to really hit the ground in order to get back up. And that's when I started learning how to live life. That's when I started double clicking. That's when I started, reading. That's when I came across authors like Brené Brown and trying to understand what is the meaning of life, how to live this life fully. What is the meaning of happiness? How to just live with your eyes open and ensuring that you're living each day to the best of your ability, even though it's really difficult. And trust me, up to today, like I have my ups and downs. Not every day is lived to the best of my ability because I'm a human being, but just to have, that spiritual awareness. I think that's where my spiritual awakening came. And I am a completely different person today than I was back then. And I think that's because I went through this loss and I hit rock bottom, and then I picked myself back and I started exploring what is the meaning of life in real life.
Yeah. And I'm sorry that it was that I
know it's sad, right? Yeah. Like sometimes you really have to go through something so bad in order just to be, someone to shake you, and then you wake up.
Yeah. This is the thing that struck me the very first time we spoke, was how alive you are. And it's a really amazing thing, because not everybody is. A lot of people go through life, just with, as you said, with the blinders on. And then sometimes you meet people who you sense are fully alive, fully present, who really meet you, who are really sucking the juice out of life, and I think you're one of these people. Very much so. I definitely got that. And it's interesting that you relate that to a spiritual awakening. So tell us a little bit more about what's spiritual for you and what being spiritually awake is.
I think spiritual awakening to me is just being more aware of myself, my surroundings, my emotions, my loved ones, my life, my actions, how would I put it? We live in a world where it's a domino effect. We are all interconnected, like all of us. When you go to a coffee shop and you're buying a coffee, you think that's it. No, it's connected to the barista. It's connected to the place where the coffee beans are coming from. It's connected to the country where the coffee beans are, coming. Like every single thing is correlated and connected. And I think spirituality is understanding that we have an impact in this world, whether we, go blindly or not. So you might as well do it with your eyes wide open, understanding what is the meaning of happiness. All our actions are driven by the motivation of happiness. We all want to be happy. When you make a purchase, you do it because of the motivation of being happy. When you cut your hair, it's because you want to be happy. Like every single thing we do, every single thing, the meal we order, the clothes we wear is for the motivation of happiness. But what does happiness actually mean? So learning all of this, how to be present in the now, how to treat others, how to be aware. So all of this to me is spiritual awakening.
Beautiful. I love that description. I absolutely love it. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me.
It's a journey. I'm still learning.
It is a journey. And you've named so many things there, and definitely it's about the presence with which we show up, being aware of ourselves and others. But I particularly like what you said about interconnectedness. And I think the more spiritually awake one is, the more one understands sees the interconnectedness of life. And this is on a material level, just in terms of all the people that it takes to kind of make,
A coffee,
make things go. And, I was at a retreat in Sri Lanka recently, and one of the practices that we had in the retreat was, before we ate, just kind of taking time to consider all the people who'd been involved in putting that food on our plate. And it's a 5-minute meditation, just to consider all of the people who've been involved in, kind of planting and growing and transporting and cooking and, serving. And it's just like, wow, you see that. But that's on a material plane. But I think, on a spiritual level, we're all interconnected as well. And, the more time we spend connecting with our higher selves, the more we realize that actually, we are all part of a greater consciousness.
It's true.
Yes.
And it's so true what you said, even about the meal in front of us, because we take it for granted. You know what I mean? The fact that, okay, we have, food that we can eat, but also, as you said, the number of people that are actually behind it. And also our energies as human beings. We don't realize that we influence each other on an ongoing basis. Whether we're sitting in traffic and a person cuts us off or is rude to us in driving, it has an impact on us. Like we bounce energy off each other and we influence each other. And that's why even through my work, what I'm trying to do is spread happiness as much as I can, by at least in the workplace, because then they will show up better in their personal lives as well. If you've had a good day at work with no surprise and more transparency, more communication, etc., you will go home and you will be a better wife or a mom, because when you're stressed out at work, you take it out on the people that you love the most. It's sad but true. If I have a terrible day at work, I mean, even if my husband chews, I'm going to be like, why are you chewing so loudly? And bless him, it's not his fault. It's just like we're all so interconnected.
Yeah. I'm glad you addressed that, because I was going to ask you, this is all very well, but how do you bring that into that sense of interconnectedness and awakeness into your working practices?
Yeah, it's just by knowing that people are going to carry it with them. If you have a conversation, which is, how would I put it? If you're creating a work environment where you're creating anxiety for your people, they're going to take that anxiety and spread it to their loved ones, to their kids, who are then going to spread it to the people that they are, meeting on a day-to-day basis. And that's how I think we are where we are today. I think we can actually get world peace by just treating each other with kindness, because that will have a domino effect. If we treat each other with love, then you will treat the next person with love, and then the next person and the next person. And that's how it just flows. If you treat someone with unkindness, then that will also flow.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. That's my favorite quote.
Is it? Yeah.
Yes.
It's Gandhi. I guess people recognize that quote, but it starts from within, right?
Exactly.
And, I think you have to get connected to the light once yourself to be able to spread that, right? So you have to have a source of love and light in your life. Yeah. And that might be being in nature to restore yourself. It might be communing with your animals or your children, or it might be about connecting to the mind of the universe and having practices which help you to stay in the light. But I think those things are really important as leaders, because the more we tend our inner flame, then the more we have to share and give of that aliveness and awakeness with other people at work. So.
Of course. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, we will not show up for our people.
Yeah.
And then we're just going to spread all the negativity or whatever's going on through us. And we go through a lot of stress. So we have to take extra care of ourselves, to be honest.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated. What are your practices to keep your inner light, which is obviously burning so brightly? How do you keep your inner light alive?
Journaling.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, we're back to this. I'm telling you, journaling is the secret to life. I've been doing it for a number of years now, 3 years to be precise. And I try, as I said, at least 5-6 times a week. And I write what I'm grateful for, even the smallest things. Like I had all green lights, while I was going to work, like all the traffic lights were all green, or something as small as the person at the elevator smiled at me or pressed, it's like all of these small things that we take for granted, but there's so many good things happening in life. Even the smallest things that you have a body and you're able to run on a treadmill, or at least you have a gym that you can go to, or you have the health, to be able to do something, or the food on your plate. We take all of these things for granted. And in my journaling, because I look through my entire day and I list down everything that I'm grateful for, you just come to realize how good your life really is. And even the small things that go wrong, they don't really matter.
It's so important. And, I think I studied neuroscience for a little while, and I was fascinated that, human beings are kind of wired to spot the downsides and the difficulties and the things that go wrong and the problems and focus on that. And left to our own devices, we focus on that all the time. And so it's almost like a practice of going against one's own neurobiology to focus on the positive and more of that, and being grateful for the smallest things. I really think that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your practice.
Of course, but that's not it. Sorry, I just want to So, because yes, we are grateful for things and positivity, but as I said, like, I'm a human being. I also have something in my mind that's like, okay, so what is actually bothering me? I need to name it, because sometimes there are things bothering us during the day, but we just take that feeling like, oh, I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
But what exactly is it that's bothering you? So I take the time to actually point it out. What is bothering me? Because if I don't know what it is, I'm not going to be able to fix it. And I want to fix it.
I love that. So what I hear is that you spot the emotion and then you sit with it to unfold what's at the root of that, so that you can do something with that.
Exactly. Because without that, again, you just don't know. You're walking with blinds on. You're just feeling this feeling. I'm not happy. Well, why am I not happy?
Yeah.
Why did I have a bad day?
And it's the very opposite of false positivity, isn't it? Forced positivity, where and I think people are sometimes worried about digging into a difficult feeling, that it might get worse. But actually, when you dig into it, you sit with a feeling and allow it to come up. It's almost never overwhelming. Feelings go in sort of waves, and you kind of then understand, as you say, what's underpinning that, and move it in a more positive direction.
Exactly.
Very good. Great advice. So there's one question I want to end with, actually, which is the soul-led invitation. So this is about inviting, what you would. Sorry, I'm going to cut that because I've totally fluffed that up. So I want to end with the soul-led invitation, and that's something that you would offer to people listening as a soul-led invitation, something that you would encourage them to stand in or to show up as. Yeah.
So I think if there's one thing I've learned in life, is that there's one thing you have control over, and that's your mind. There's the circle of influence, what you can do within your circle of influence and what you cannot. But your mind is something that you can control, meaning that you may be in a business or an organization that has, not great culture, and maybe there's nothing that you can do about it, but you can control your reaction. And this is to life and to work. Even in your personal life, if you're having an argument with your spouse or your loved one or a friend or whoever it is, you can actually control your reaction. The way you think, your mind. Don't drive yourself crazy. Be kind to yourself. You can control all the thoughts that are going in, and you can create a better life for yourself, no matter what the environment you are in. And as soon as you start doing that, automatically it will start impacting or showing in your actions. And then ironically, you will change the environment that you are actually in. So what I would tell everyone is, please don't forget, you can control your thoughts. You can control your mind. And that is the one thing. It's your freedom. It's the place. It's the one thing that you can really do.
Beautiful. Thank you for that wonderful soul-led invitation to close our session. This has been a really lovely conversation, Sabahatt. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing so much of yourself. I really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it, honestly, Kate. Thank you so much for having me. And I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.